Hello and welcome to this Amendment 4 Updates video, where we discuss the changes and updates introduced to the wiring regulations. As you know, Amendment 4 was released on the 15th of April 2026 in the form of a new wiring regulations book, the Orange Book. This update brings about significant changes to the wiring regulations book, such as the change of 1, 2, 3, etc. to A, B, C, etc., warranting the publication of the brand new Orange Book. Other than this groundbreaking change, the new book also includes some other significant changes and additions. This short video is mainly for those who already have a version of the 18th edition under their belt, with Amendment 2 or maybe Amendment 3. In this case, you probably don't want to go on a full training course, but you rightfully think that you should be aware of the changes introduced. So let's dive in. Here are the quick highlights, and don't worry, we will talk about these in more detail right after. Part 1. Scope of the wiring regulations. Stationary secondary batteries and power over Ethernet are now part of the regulations. Part 2. Significant change to the terminology used. Instructed person electrically, ordinary person and skilled person removed from the definitions. The regulations now go back to the good old competent and experienced terms. The term isolator is now removed. Instead, the regulations now use terminology such as isolating device or disconnector. This will apparently aid clarity. Special attention to terms unidirectional protective device and bidirectional protective device, which are now used for devices such as RCDs. New definitions. Residual direct current detecting device, RDCDD, and residual direct current protective device, RDCPD. And the big one, the new TNCS PNB system, which is actually nothing new, but it's new for the regulations. So, new but not new. We'll talk about this a bit later. Part 3. TNCS PNB system, Figure 3.9b. Again, the earthing arrangement that is new to the wiring regulations, but which was used for decades by the DNO. The main thing is that from now on, you cannot simply assume that a TNCS system is PME. It can now also be PNB. Part 4. No significant changes. Hooray! Part 5. Functional bonding conductor. A new pink-coloured conductor that will be mainly used for ICT and similar electronics applications. Table 52.1. Requirements for a cable concealed in a wall or partition. This table brings together several lengthy regulations in a more visually appealing way. Chapter 57, an actual new chapter in the wiring regulations. It deals with the requirements for stationary secondary batteries. Part 6. As a small addition, the regulations now state that the use of photographic and thermographic images is allowed. These can now be attached to your electrical forms. Part 7. Hot tubs and pools for religious purposes are now included in the regulations. Orange cables. These are to be used in caravan camping parks and similar locations. Significant additions to Section 710, medical locations, and significant expansion to Section 714, Power over Ethernet. Moving on. Part 8. Appendix 17 on energy efficiency is now deleted from the regulations, and instead we get a new chapter in Part 8, Chapter 81. Appendices. Updates to current carrying capacities and voltage drop figures for some specific installation conditions. Appendix 6, Model Forms. Small change to the EICR form, particularly in the observations section. Now, let's have a look in more detail at some of the most significant changes or additions introduced with the Amendment 4. Starting with Part 2, Definitions. Amendment 4 to the 18th edition removes the following definitions: instructed person, electrically; ordinary person; skilled person. Why did this happen, and what is it replaced with? As you might know, it was the term skilled person that replaced the original term competent person used throughout the wiring regulations for many years before the 18th edition was released. So the term competent person was replaced with skilled person, and now the term skilled person is gone. The reason behind this change is that the IET now finds that the term skilled person is too vague and open to interpretation. So instead of relying on labels such as skilled or competent, the regulations now focus on whether the person is suitably qualified and experienced, and whether risks are properly assessed and controlled. So the responsibility shifts from what you're called to what you can actually do safely and competently. This, I think, is a change that makes a lot of sense. Another one that I'm not so sure about is the removal of the term isolator. This is once again done to aid clarity. The regulations now consistently use defined terms like isolating device, device for isolation, switched disconnector, circuit breaker with isolation capability. There are some other new definitions in Part 2 now, namely residual direct current detecting device, RDC-DD, and residual direct current protective device, RDC-PD, but we'll not spend time on these right now. Moving on to Part 3. The big change is the introduction of the TNCS PNB system. This is a significant change to Part 3 of the wiring regulations. Amendment 4 now recognises the earthing arrangement that is defined as TNCS PNB. Okay, so what is the difference between the TNCS PME system and the TNCS PNB system? Both are TNCS systems, combined PEN in the network, separated at the intake. With PME, what we're used to, the PEN conductor is earthed multiple times along the network. That's why it's called protective multiple earthing. This gives a low impedance earth path everywhere. This is the standard UK domestic supply. PNB, the new thing in the regulations, is still TNCS, but the neutral earth link is only made at one point, very close to the installation, typically at a dedicated transformer or a pole-mounted transformer feeding one customer. So instead of multiple earthing points, we will have a single earthing point near the customer. And again, this is not a new earthing arrangement as such, it's just the formal recognition of something that has been in use for many years. DNOs have been using PNB for years in situations like rural supplies, large single customers, private substations. In terms of the 18th edition exam, the main thing to remember is that from now on you cannot simply assume that a TNCS system is PME. Now it can be PME or PNB. Please try to remember this. Then, in Part 5, we have the introduction of the functional bonding conductor. This is another new addition to the wiring regulations, functional bonding conductor. The emphasis being on functional. So the purpose is functional, not protective. As such, it must not be confused or used as a protective conductor. It mustn't replace the earthing or bonding required. This pink-coloured conductor is mainly used for functional bonding in ICT systems, data networks, and other highly sensitive electronic installations. Its purpose is not protection, but to make the equipment work properly by improving signal stability or electromagnetic compatibility. A real-world example is data cabinets in a server room connected with a pink conductor to minimize EMC. We also have a new table that was designed to replace and bring together several lengthy regulations. Table 52.1. Requirements for a cable concealed in a wall or partition. Not a bad change, in my opinion. See for yourself and decide. Then the big one. Chapter 57. Stationary secondary batteries. This is a brand new chapter in the wiring regulations book, and one that I'm sure will be a favourite for test questions in the future. So, why is it an important new chapter? As you know, modern installations are no longer just consumers. They are prosumers, produce and store and consume energy. One example is stationary secondary batteries, which are now defined as a source of energy in Regulation 570.1. So this creates new risks. Backfeed from batteries, stored energy remaining after isolation, higher fault currents, fire risks from lithium batteries. Chapter 57 exists to manage these new hazards properly. Then we have some changes in Part 7. Small but impactful additions to the scope of Section 702, swimming pools and other basins. This now includes hot tubs and pools for religious or ceremonial purposes. Then there is Section 708, electrical installations in caravan camping parks and similar locations. Figure 708, detailing the supply system between the caravan pitch supply equipment and the caravan or motor caravan, now includes a special note stating the outer sheath should be coloured orange. I think most of these cables were already coloured orange, but it's nice to formalise things in this way. The next thing to mention is Section 710, medical locations. This section has had some significant changes and additions introduced. The use of AFDDs, for example. We'll not go into these right now, so all I would say is that if you are working in medical locations, please be aware that Amendment 4 has brought in some significant changes. The same thing goes for Section 716, Power over Ethernet. It has been expanded to reflect the shift towards smart, low voltage and digitally integrated electrical systems, with greater focus on thermal effects, system integration, and safe design. Again, we'll not go into this right now. The next one to mention is Chapter 81, which is Energy Efficiency. As you probably know, it was Appendix 17 that dealt with the subject previously. Amendment 4 now deletes Appendix 17 and introduces Chapter 81. However, if you look at Chapter 81, you will see that instead of providing specific guidance, it simply provides a reference to other publications, such as the Building Regulations Approved Document L, Conservation of Fuel and Power. It's basically a list of external documents and publications. The reason why is that energy efficiency is a complex and constantly evolving subject, unlike the core safety rules in the wiring regulations. Referencing external documents avoids the need for constant changes to Chapter 81. In my opinion, this is not a bad idea. Finally, we have the appendices. The one change that will actually impact all of us electricians right away is a small change in the model forms. Luckily, only the EICR form is affected. The others stay the same. If you compare the new EICR model form to the old one, you can see that there are some minor changes to the layout, particularly in the observations section. This was done with the intention of greater clarity with the codes used, particularly greater clarity on C2 versus C3. Why? To reduce overuse of C2, potentially dangerous, where C3, improvement recommended, is more appropriate. It's also worth pointing out that the use of FI, further investigation required, code is now strongly discouraged for domestic properties. For small installations, such as these, there shouldn't be a need for the use of this code. Lastly, it's worth pointing out that the regulations now permit the use of photographic and thermographic evidence alongside your electrical testing forms. These can now be attached and/or included in the forms. And that's it. Now you're up to date in terms of the changes and additions brought in by Amendment 4. See you soon.